Hi, Ellie. Unmute.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's actually on
It's
the
great.
19th, but we're celebrating a week ahead. We put it in the bulletin a week ahead.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
All
So,
right.
so Ellie, where are you now? We were just talking about how wonderful it was that people who are far away can listen in. So where are you tuning in from?
I'm in Virginia Beach
All right.
and I feel perfectly at home coming back to St. Luke's. I love it. I absolutely love it.
It's wonderful to see you.
All right. Excuse me. I think we will get started. If you all are ready. Okay. All right. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So before we get into it, I'm going to do something a little different, something that I've never done over Zoom before. So you'll have to bear with me and let me know what you think at the end. When I was first thinking about A Root of Jesse, the first image that I got was being rooted and grounded. And that led me to the thought spiral of what keeps me rooted and grounded. And I think especially during this time of chaos, being rooted and grounded is a good thing, is a necessary thing. So we are going to start with a little meditation, just a few minutes of silence. And I'm going to give you a question to meditate on. But before that, when I tell the students to meditate, we'll put both of our feet firmly on the ground. And if it's comfortable for you, you can put your palms facing up or down, depending on what's most comfortable. And if you want, you can close your eyes. You don't have to. But we have been talking about names of God, and the way we think of Jesus and how we refer to Jesus. And that's what the O Antiphons do, is give us new ways to talk to Jesus and envision Jesus. So today, I would like you to think about the question, when you are praying, how do you address the divine and why is that? And so I'll just give you a minute or so in silence to meditate on that question. And as you open your eyes and move your body around a little bit, I invite you to share what came to you while you were thinking about this. You don't need to raise your hand or anything, just unmute yourself and go ahead.
I always start my prayers with Dear God. Always the first thing I say in any prayer of gratitude or asking for help.
Have you ever thought about why that is?
I haven't, but I started thinking about it, and I don't know if it's because that's how we write letters. I
Mm-hmm.
no reason why.
Actually, it's funny because Gloria and I have never talked about this, but I also always start, dear God, dear God. But the reason I do is because probably, well, when I was a small child, my grandmother um, taught me that. And she said, there's two reasons, because as you'll learn, the word dear is used several ways in life. But dear is writing a letter. It's like you're addressing a letter to God. And at the same time, he is our dear beloved God. And so the word dear is the way I have addressed my prayers for over 70 years. So it's habit that I've never seen fit to change for any reason.
Mm-hmm.
I will pick up on the grandmother part of that. I'm remembering my grandmother always kneeling down, and I would be next to her. But I think we just started with "Oh God" or "Heavenly Father" or "Lord," and I'm thinking it's thing ways that were familiar from the prayers that we heard week after week and day after day in the church services.
So my
Also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
so my experience is a little bit different because I come out of the Quaker tradition, and in Quaker meeting, when you center what Quakers call center down, listening to the Holy Spirit, you know that God is there anyway. And so God's not addressed as God or Jesus. We know that God is listening to us.
I didn't know that. That's beautiful. Thank you.
I also say, dear God. And I think, when I was meditating, I feel close to God when I say that. And I think that's why. I mean, I think it's probably habit as well, and probably the way I was taught, but I definitely feel close.
Mm.
Gallery view. Hit all those. No.
I just think I was asked this question during an interview once, and it caught me off guard. No one had ever asked me that, and no one had ever asked me to think about that. And so I obviously think about this question all the time now. And I typically, when I pray, I pray to Jesus, because Jesus is the being of the Trinity that I identify with most. But something to think about moving forward. Did anyone else want to share on that before I move forward?
I always, I usually say, dear God, but sometimes I just say, oh God, if I just want to talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a formal prayer, if it's a certain thing, I'll start with dear God. But if I just look out and see a beautiful sunrise or a sunset, I'll just talk to him.
Right. And sometimes for me, that oh can be like a sigh of like, oh, this is amazing. Or sometimes it's like a sigh of like, oh, I'm exhausted and I need something. And this is where I am in prayer. And I also think that's interesting too, is where I'm in a different place in my life is how I refer to God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add, Naomi, is how amazing it is how it changes over time. Sometimes even within a day, from oh, that's amazing to oh God. But they're all good, right? Because God just wants us to talk to him. So wherever we are, it's okay.
Exactly. So today we are on our third O Antiphon. And O Antiphons typically refer, of course, to the hymn we sing in Advent, O Come, Emmanuel. And today is O Root of Jesse. And that in the hymn, it's the verse is, O come thou branch of Jesse's tree, free them from Satan's tyranny, that trust thy mighty power to save, and give them victory o'er the grave. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. And that is referencing in the Bible from Isaiah. So does someone want to read that for us?
I will.
Go ahead.
A shoot shall come out from the stock of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. From Isaiah. Shall I read the other one?
Mhm.
In that
Please do.
day, the root of Jesse will stand as a banner for the peoples. The nations will rally to him, and his resting place will be glorious.
So what image does this evoke for you, or thought, or what does it bring to mind for you? I think this is not something we typically think about. At least it's not something I typically think about.
Well, I would just say that because my mother and my daughter are both named Jesse, we always comment when this comes up and think the Jesus came from the root of Jesse, our beloved daughter and mother.
Mm.
So that's probably not, we don't go further necessarily.
No, that's fine. I love that.
I think partially it's, for me, the whole idea that everything we believe is as Christians is rooted in the Jewish faith and the Jewish books. And to me, I like it.
Right,
Even though I
exactly.
don't understand them so well, but I like it.
Right, right.
Image of just growing, and that, Christianity is not stagnant.
Definitely. So a little bit of background on this. Isaiah was prophesying, and at this time, there was a hope among the people that a Messiah, an earthly king, would come and assume the throne of David. So at this point, and as we're getting closer to Jesus, the line of Jesse, the king, who is the father of King David, had kind of died out. It hadn't died off completely, obviously, but it was not the same as it once was. So people were hoping for that earthly Messiah to come back and assume that throne. And then also in the chapter before this, God had struck down any kingdom that came against Israel. Oops. And the verse just before this, just before that first one, says, "Look, the sovereign, the Lord of hosts will lop the boughs with terrifying power. The tallest trees will be cut down, and the lofty will be brought low. He will hack down the thickets of the forests with an axe, and Lebanon with its majestic trees will fall." So going back to this, this is hopeful. They see that there's growth in this desolation, that this isn't the end. There's something to look forward to. So when I hear this, the first thing I think of is that hope, and that's what I get from that verse. And then I also get this idea of royal lineage, and we'll get back to the royal lineage more. But the first thing that I think of is hope. And the first thing that I thought of, we had a meeting to kind of talk about this, because I was like, I don't know much about the O Antiphons. How am I supposed to talk about the O Antiphons? So the four of us had a meeting to talk about this. And as we were talking about it, the first thing that came to mind was Lord of the Rings. And I love Lord of the Rings. It's my favorite series, probably. I think like the movie series maybe is my favorite movie series of all time. I love Lord of the Rings. So the first thing that this image of the tree that has kind of fallen desolate, that doesn't have much hope, and then there is just that branch, that spring that's coming up. And so the first thing that I thought of was the white tree of Gondor from Lord of the Rings. And I don't know how familiar you are with Lord of the Rings, but the white tree is a symbol of hope to the people. It's been passed down through generations, and it's a symbol that the king is yet to come. And at this point in the story, there is no king on the throne, and they're waiting for their king to come. So we can kind of see this. but I'm going to show you a clip from the movie. So let me make sure I can do this properly. We'll see what happens.
Oops.
We'll get there. Okay. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, here we go.
1,000 years this city has stood. Now, at the whim of a madman, it will fall. And the white tree, the tree of the king, will never bloom again.
Why are they still guarding it?
They guard it because they have hope. A faint and fading hope that one day it will flower. The king will come, and this city will be as it once was, before it fell into decay.
All right, have any of you seen that before?
No.
I don't remember it. I know I've seen the movies, but I don't remember that one thing.
So I'll show you what it's actually saying. Are we back to the presentation now? Did I do it properly or no?
No, we're still in the video.
Great, thank you. And we're back, right? Perfect. Okay, so it's a little hard to understand. They're talking a little fast, and also they have accents, right? So Gandalf says to Pippin, the white tree, the tree of the king, will never bloom again. And Pippin says, why are they still guarding it then? And Gandalf says, they guard it because they have hope, a faint and fading hope that one day it will flower. A king will come and the city will be as it once was before it fell into decay. So that's the first thing that I thought of when reading this antiphon, is this hope that we guard very closely. So we're going to go back to the Isaiah, and this is a little long, but this is the full sort of prophecy of Isaiah. Does someone want to read that just on the left?
A shoot shall come out from the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. His delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see, or decide by what his ears hear. But with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt around his waist, and faithfulness the belt around his loins. The wolf shall live with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the kid, the calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play over the hold of the asp, and the weaned child shall put its hand on the adder's den. They will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. All that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes of fire shall be woken. A light from the shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be blade that was broken. The crownless again shall be king.
So what do you notice about these two? So the one on the left is the prophecy from Isaiah, and the one on the right is a prophecy in Lord of the Rings. So, of course, the prophecy on the left from Isaiah is about Jesus, about the king to come. But more than that, it's also about what it's going to be like when the king comes, right? And then I think it's the same on the right with the poem from Lord of the Rings. This is talking about the King Aragorn who comes. The last book in the series, Lord of the Rings, is called The Return of the King. And it's referring to Aragorn, who has been out in the wilderness. He's been learning, he's been protecting, but he's been living his life separate from the king, and he comes back and he takes the throne. And so the crownless will once again be king. And the image on the bottom there is the tree of Gondor that J.R.R. Tolkien drew to represent this white tree that was dying but is coming back to life. And in the movie, you can see towards the end that a sprout starts to grow and the tree starts to bloom as the king comes back. So I think there are endless parallels here. But this is also common in literature, right? This idea of the chosen one who's going to come and take care of the people. So what other examples can you think of this trope of the king coming back, the people are in hope and waiting for this? Not necessarily the king, but the chosen one. Another one of my favorites is Harry Potter. And Harry Potter is the chosen one, and the people are in this dark place after the Dark Lord has waged war on the wizarding world. And Harry Potter comes back, and he's a glimmer of hope for the people. And again, in the story, there's a prophecy that says that he's going to come and defeat the Dark Lord. There's also, again, these are younger fiction. So we also have Katniss Everdeen in the Hunger Games. There isn't really a prophecy as much there, or have you read A Wrinkle in Time or seen the movie that came out recently with Meg Murray being sort of the chosen one?
You also have Aslan in the Chronicles of Narnia.
Mm-hmm. Right? And people are whispering about Aslan coming back, but they don't know where or when. What about King Arthur? Right?
Yeah.
So people were waiting for King Arthur to come. Anything else that you guys can think of?
You're good.
Many fairy tales.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the premise of a lot of them.
Right? A lot of fantasy books have this idea of hope for something that is to come that will save them from the situation that they're currently in, right? That it's going to be better and we just have to wait. And maybe the waiting's not easy, as we're finding out right now, right? The waiting isn't easy always for something better to come, but we know that it's coming. So if we go back to the original verses, we'll talk a little bit about the royal lineage that this also evokes. So a shoot shall come from the stock of Jesse. And then in that second verse, in that day, the root of Jesse will stand as a banner for the peoples. So in both of these parts of the verse, it's talking about where the Messiah is coming from and who the Messiah is coming from. So this places Jesus as from the line of kings. So Jesse was the father of David, who became, of course, the great King David. And this is an image from the St. John's Bible. An illumination, of course. And we use this one a lot, so I think you probably have seen it. But this is the image that talks about where Jesus came from. So there at the bottom, you can kind of see Abraham, and there at the top, you see Jesus. And I've blown up for a little bit where it says Jesse and David, so you can see where Jesse is on that line. So you can see where Jesus is coming from, and you can see that he's part of this royal lineage, but it also tells us that Jesus was human. He came from humans. All of these people are his ancestors, and his ancestors were all human beings like you and I. So this places him as a king, but it also places him as a person just like us. But of course, before we move on, I always have to point out when we're at this illumination that this illumination, of course, includes women when a lot of family trees don't for Jesus. So we can see Ruth there next to Solomon. Up at the top, we can see Mary, and throughout there are names of women. And that's just not something we get enough. So I always love to point that out. So before we move on, does anyone have any questions, any thoughts? Anything they want to add? Great. So something else that is rooted in this O antiphon, rooted is pun intended, is the idea of the Jesse tree. Has anyone ever heard of a Jesse tree, or have you ever done a Jesse tree or made a Jesse tree?
Heard of it, but I don't recall what it is.
Right. So this is an image of the Jesse tree. That's an illustration. But so there's this tradition, and my family did it for a couple years growing up. And what we would do is during Advent, we set up our Christmas tree, but we only put white lights on the tree. We normally would put all different colors. We just put white lights on the Christmas tree. And then we would hand make our ornaments. And on each day of Advent, we'd put a different ornament on the tree that we had made. And each ornament, as you can kind of see from this image, each ornament has a different symbol. And what they do is they tell the story of Jesus and the Bible. So the Jesse tree is a way of preparing for Advent, in addition to the Advent wreath that we're familiar with, right? So we journey each day through the story of Jesus's family tree. And you can kind of pick them out here and there. You can see like the tablets of Moses. You can see the serpent. You can see the rainbow. So we have these different stories. I think probably the lyre symbolizes David. And each different ornament symbolizes a story from Jesus's family tree. And again, traditionally each day you would hang a different ornament. But this can not only be seen as art that we do or things that we do with children, it's also seen in art all over the world, the image of the Jesse tree. So one of these famous images is a window in Chartres Cathedral in France. I know it's kind of hard to see with our image, with our pictures of our with ourselves kind of there on the side. But has anyone ever been there before? Have you been to the cathedral in Chartres, France?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Incredible.
I'm
Yes.
embarrassed to say I lived in France for 3 years and I never went. So I have to go back. That's just what that means. So you can see it's really hard to tell here, but you can go on their website and kind of see each of the images up close. But you can see that this is a tree of Jesse, with Jesse being there at the bottom. And I have that picture blown up there in the middle. So that on the very bottom is Jesse. And then as we go up to Jesus. And so Jesus is there at the very top, and you can kind of see him if our videos are kind of out of the way, but you can see that image close up of Jesus at the cathedral in Chartres. And you can see that he's surrounded by 7 doves, and that's the symbol of the Holy Spirit. So even in art, we see this idea of Jesse's tree, and it's just another way to share the story of Jesus and who Jesus was and is to us. Do you have any questions? Any thoughts? I'm not good at conclusions, so this is what
I would love it. Could you send us the Jesse tree image? Because I think that is such a neat thing. I mean, to do. I would love to do that someday.
Right? It's really fun. Yeah, I can send that to you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'd love to have that too for my Jessies.
Right? It's just it's something else to do during Advent that we look at Advent in a different way. I don't know about you, but I always have thought about it sort of as, 1 candle a week. And you kind of wait for that day where you get to light another candle. Or at least I always do. I'm like excited to light the new candle after lighting the same ones for a full week. But it's another way to keep us in the spirit and also remember the story. But yeah, I'll send it to you. Any other questions?
I'd just make a comment that is, probably 180 degrees from where you have taken us today. But
right.
Whenever I heard the shoot of Jesse, I was taken back to a time when I was developing some land in Hawaii, and the idea of shoots coming out of the various trees and vegetation, most particularly bamboo, that was, it was indomitable. You would try to repress it, and it would just come roaring back. There was no way to stop those shoots. Well, eventually there were, but they would always come back. I mean, even if you imagine you could kill it, it would still come back. And so whenever I think of this, it's the indomitable force that's there. It's irrepressible. No matter what you try to do, the shoot will continue to come back. And I know that's not what you were showing us, but whenever I hear the shoot of Jesse, that's what I'm sitting there thinking of, is how it's a life. It's so vibrant. It wants to live, and it will live, and it will show you that you can survive. And so that's sort of, I mean, even when it was a huge opponent, if you will, for us in what we were doing. You had to find a way to live with it, and that was a wonderful, if you will, message as well. And it was not going to be dominated. So live with it and make friends with it, and find a way to use it to your advantage, and not try to wipe it out.
Right. But I also think that's the best part about these O Antiphons, is that we each can take them in a different way, right? So I immediately go to Lord of the Rings because I love fantasy stories, but it means something different to each of us, which I think is why it's important to think about how we refer to Jesus, because like Ryan said, at a different time in our lives, a different name will appeal to us. And so I think that's the wonder of exploring these O Antiphons right now, as we kind of figure out what's meaningful to us right now in this time and space.
Yeah, thank you, Naomi, for that. I think you're right on that. And for Bill and the shoot, that's so true, right? Those shoot that we love, that God is so is going to just keep on coming. What I've struck this week, though, and looking forward to your talk, was like the root of Jesse. We're learning so much more about trees, right? And how they are actually communicating to each other by their roots, so that there's this whole underground communication language system happening, which just sort of adds to my wonderment of all the ways that God is able to kind of infuse our world. So, I mean, that root of Jesse makes me think, gosh, those roots are still somehow under our ground right this minute. Yeah.
And I think we even see that like from the storm. I look around St. Luke's campus and we can see kind of a lot of roots right now. Not as much today as we could like a week or so ago, but just like how amazing tree roots are. It's just like, oh, they're just really cool to think about. That's another thing from Lord of the Rings, is people can get taken over by the roots if you stay in one place for too long.
It won't. Don't worry about it.
All right. Does anyone have anything else? Well, thank you all for coming. Next week, Ryan's going to finish us up. We just have one more week of Advent. Can you believe it? And then Christmas is in what? 12 days. We're almost there.
Scary.
We're getting there. Yeah.
I know. So thank you guys.
Naomi.
Thank
We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you.
Very
Bye.
helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.